You don't have to be a whiskey buff to picture it. In one room, there's a pot still. It looks like an oversized teardrop made of copper. It's wide at the base, and it rises into a graceful, narrowing neck. It's the heart of traditional whiskey distilling, where vapor rises, cools, and condenses back into a liquid, one slow batch at a time. A single run can take hours, sometimes an entire day, just to produce a few barrels worth savoring. Across the same distillery, the rhythm is different. Tall column stills, gleaming in stainless steel, rise like towers, efficient, steady, continuous. Here the spirit never stops moving. The process that takes a pot still all day can happen here in just a few minutes. Both are distilling whiskey. Both transform what they've been given, grain and water, into something more refined. One process draws out depth and character through patience and care. The other ensures consistency and scale through structure and precision. And that's the same tension that many of us feel in leadership, in work, in our relationships, even in our faith. The tension between depth and efficiency, between scale and craft, between significance and speed. Sometimes what once worked, what produced results, no longer does. The pace, the system, the success starts to feel hollow. Those moments can feel uncomfortable, even disorienting, but they're sacred in their own way. These are crossroad moments when what we built no longer feels aligned with what we're truly built for. Maybe that next season isn't about running faster. Maybe it's about slowing down, letting what is inside of you rise, refine, and become something richer. If you've ever seen whiskey being made, you know that this is one of the most fascinating parts of the process. Everything that comes from the field, the grain, the yeast, the water, has already done its work. The fermentation is over, and what happens next is truly transformation. That's what distilling is, separating out what's pure and essential from everything that doesn't belong. And in whiskey making, there are two main ways it happens. The pot still, that rounded copper vessel we talked about earlier, is one of the oldest forms of distillation, used for hundreds of years. It works in small batches where the distiller carefully controls the heat and the timing. During the run, they watch for the moment called the cut. This is the exact point when they separate the heart of the spirit, which is the best part, from the harsh beginning, called the head, and the fading end, referred to as the tail. It's a slow, deliberate, deeply human process, equal parts science, art, and intuition. The column still, by contrast, was developed in the 1800s to keep up with the growing demand. It's tall, efficient, and continuous. The spirit never stops moving. What might take a pot still all day happens here in a few minutes. It's built for scale and efficiency, not for variation. Both methods transform what they're given into something more refined. In whiskey making, it's grain and water. In our lives and leadership, the raw material is our experiences, challenges, relationships, and seasons of change. Some of us distill our lives like a pot still, intentionally, reflectively, batch by batch, learning and adjusting as we go. Others distill more like column stills, structured, efficient, always in motion. And neither is wrong, but sometimes in the middle of progress or success, we realize that the process we've been using no longer fits the season we're in, or the one we want to move into. The results, The habits, even the rhythms that once served us, no longer serves us now. That's the moment of tension. The space between what we built and what we're built for. And how we choose to distill that tension, whether we let it refine us or rush to push through it, shapes not only what we create, but who we become. So for me, that moment came when I started to see my own process differently. For most of my career, I was focused on marketing. I loved the craft, the creativity, the strategy, even the pressure of delivering results. But I was always in motion. Projects stacked on projects, deadlines, meetings, launches. In hindsight, I can see it pretty clearly that I was running like a column still. Focused on efficiency, always in motion. Refining but never resting. Producing but rarely pausing. And for a long time, it was working for me. But then the tension started to build, quietly at first. In the middle of doing, I started to hear the whisper, "Is this it?" I'd find myself questioning whether the work that looked successful from the outside was really significant on the inside. And that's when the pull between what we built and what we're built for showed up. And that's when I started to question things and began to explore that shift from a column still approach to a pot still approach. More intentional, more hands-on, more curious about what needed to be refined and not just about what needed to get done. Through that slower process, I started to see what truly mattered and what didn't. I started distilling out the things that no longer served me. Clients that drained more energy than they gave. Work that was filled with time but not purpose. Habits that produced output but not growth or intentionality. And what remained had more depth, more clarity, and more meaning, just like the heart of the whiskey output. And that process led me here, to start this podcast. And even more than this, it's still leading me towards something even bigger. It's leading me to speak with leaders who are feeling that same tension, to help them refine what matters to them, to rediscover purpose inside their success, or to find significance in the middle of achievement. This clarity wouldn't have come if I kept operating like a column still. Efficient, productive, but never pausing long enough for the richness to develop. What I'm learning now is that while the output isn't as fast or predictable, what I am creating and who I am becoming carries greater depth, weight, and truth. And when I share it, people pause. They reflect. They recognize a bit of that same tension in their own lives. Because leadership and life isn't just about how much we produce. It's about the impact we have on others through the organizations we lead, the people we pour into, and the way we show up day after day. And maybe you felt that too. Maybe you're feeling the same kind of tension right now. The sense that you're moving fast, getting things done, and doing everything you think you're supposed to be doing, yet something inside of you is asking, is this still right for me? Maybe the goals haven't changed, but you have. Or maybe the pace that once gave you energy is now draining you of it. Sometimes that's not burnout. It's your soul signaling a shift. A quiet nudge from within that something deeper is asking for your attention. The way that you've been leading, working, or living might no longer align with who you're becoming. You might start to sense that in the space around you. Meetings that carry more weight and stress than they should. Teams that are moving but not connecting. Outcomes that meet the goal but miss the meaning. That's usually not a systems problem. It's a sign that purpose and pace have slipped out of rhythm. Keep ignoring it, and we risk perfecting the process while losing the presence. But when we pause to notice it, that tension becomes an invitation. And when that happens, when the tension feels familiar but heavier this time, that's when it's time to go back and look at your own refining and distilling process to see if a shift is still needed. If focusing on efficiency and quantity is no longer a driver for you, or if you're being drawn towards something more crafted, more meaningful, then maybe it's time to choose a different still. Here are 3 things to ponder that might help you navigate that shift. 1. Notice and name the shift. Where do you feel the pull toward depth? What outputs still look good to others but feel thin in practice? Actually say it out loud. This season is asking me for... and name it. Naming it can give shape to what's been stirring beneath the surface. Number 2, audit your method and do it without judgment. Are you running a column still process? Continuous, efficient, predictable, while actually longing for a pot still approach that's slower, more crafted, and intentional? Neither is wrong. They simply serve different seasons. If efficiency isn't distilling the tension anymore, experiment with a smaller batch, a slower rhythm, or a more hands-on leadership. You might discover that the work and yourself take on a richer flavor. And 3, align for significance. This is the deep work. Alignment often requires courage, and sometimes letting go of a title, a leadership style, or even that cask strength leadership pace that we talked about in an earlier episode. Choosing alignment isn't about doing less. It's about pouring yourself into what actually matters. Define significance for yourself in 1 sentence. Significance for me looks like... Let that guide your next batch, your next season, or just your next decision. And remember, that next batch doesn't have to replace everything you've been doing. In distilling, you can run a small experimental batch just to see what happens, to test the flavor, the depth, the difference. Try the same in your work and in your leadership. Protect a little time for a slower process, a crafted conversation, a deeper question. See what rises, and when you give it that space. You might discover that what emerges is richer than you expected. Every distiller knows that after you run a batch, you don't rush to pour a glass. You pause. You let the spirit rest, to settle, to breathe, to find itself. Maybe that's the work for us too. To give our own process a moment of rest before we label it, scale it, and share it. This is the quiet middle between what we're refining and what will eventually be poured. It's where patience and trust meet. So if you're in that in-between space right now, not who you were, not yet who you're becoming, don't rush it. Let it breathe. Because clarity doesn't always arrive with speed. Sometimes it settles in the silence after the heat. And when it does, that's when you and others start to taste what's really been created. Every good whiskey ends with a tasting, a pause to notice what's created and to appreciate what remains. So before we close, here are 3 tasting notes to take with you from today's conversation. Here are my tasting notes. Yours might be different. 1. The method you choose should fit the season that you're in. There's no single right way to distill, only alignment. Pot still or column still, each has its place. If your current pace or process isn't helping you refine what truly matters, experiment with a different still. What matters most is your method reflects what you hope to create. Number 2, alignment requires courage. Realignment often means turning down the heat on what once defined you. A goal, a role, even that cask strength leadership pace that once felt powerful. Choosing a slower, more crafted rhythm doesn't weaken your impact. It actually strengthens your intention. Clarity and confidence grow in the space between pressure and patience. And 3, significance can be found in any still, if the heart is right. Some of the finest spirits in the world come from column stills. It isn't the shape of the still that creates meaning, it's the care, craft, and purpose of the distiller. Depth isn't defined by speed, it's defined by purpose. When your work, your leadership, and your life pour from that center, every drop carries warmth and truth, pour after pour. Thanks for listening to Crafted Clarity. If today's conversation helped you slow down long enough to see something differently, hold on to that. And if someone else comes to mind when you've been walking through a similar season or they're walking through a similar season, pass this episode along their way. Sometimes the right story finds us at just the right time. You'll find links in the show notes to earlier conversations like cask strength leadership. And if you haven't yet subscribed, and please join the newsletter at craftedclarity.net, where we're exploring more ways to slow down, find significance, and lead with purpose. Until next time, remember, clarity isn't found. It's crafted. Thanks for listening to Crafted Clarity. If you're a leader wrestling with the tension between success and significance, or you're trying to align your work with a deeper calling, I'd love to connect with you. If your organization is facing questions about strategy, whether it's alignment, ROI, or building confidence in your team, this is the work we do every day at iBrand. And if you walk this journey yourself, or maybe you're right in the middle of it, I'd love to hear your story and maybe even share it here on the podcast. You can find me at craftedclarity.net.